It struck deep within the forest's spine, trees cracking, soil erupting, until only silence remained, thick, breathless, trembling with heat. From the wreckage emerged a figure both regal and broken. Armor scorched, one wing mangled beyond. Recognition. The alien girl staggered into the clearing, her breathing shallow, mechanical regulator stuttering with each inhalation. Her senses swam beneath Earth's heavy air, too rich, too loud, too alive. Her internal systems flickered. Warnings, but pride refused collapse. She would not die here, surrounded by primitive foliage and alien winds. She didn't hear him approach. A soft rustle of undergrowth preceded his appearance. A man, tall, wrapped in layers too thin for the temperature, eyes wide but not terrified. He paused at the edge of the fire's glow, hands raised to show peace, not dominance. His gaze scanned her body with clinical precision, noting injuries, not curves. His voice, when it came, was low. Steady. You look hurt. You need help. She bared her teeth, half warning, half instinct, but held her ground. He didn't back away. He stepped closer. The forest was still again. He offered his coat. A strange gesture, she thought, until the bitter chill brushed her scorched skin and made her shiver despite herself. Still, she did not reach for the warmth. Instead, she studied him. Not just the surface, the unremarkable brown eyes, the unkempt hair, the scar just below his lip, but something deeper, a kind of solitude that mirrored her own, and something else. Curiosity, without expectation. He spoke again, softer. I have a cabin. It's not far. You'll freeze out here. She remained silent, her people's rules echoing like steel inside her mind. Do not engage. Do not trust. Do not desire. But she took a step forward. The air between them thickened, neither hot nor cold, but charged, alive with something unspoken. Their eyes locked, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like time tilted. Not quite destiny. Not quite danger. Something suspended in between. He didn't move until she did. When she passed him, he turned and walked beside her, not leading, not pushing, matching her pace, respecting the distance she kept. The ship behind them still smoldered, its metal bones glowing red, but neither of them looked back. The stars overhead shimmered through a veil of smoke and pine, and the forest swallowed them whole as they disappeared into the trees. Two strangers, bound by chance, carried by something they didn't yet understand. Wind clawed at the wooden cabin as the door creaked open, releasing a sigh of warmth into the night air. Inside, the scent of cedar and smoke curled between rough furniture and low lighting. She hesitated on the threshold, every survival instinct screaming retreat. The walls felt too close, the quiet too intimate. He stepped aside, giving her space. No sudden movements, just patience. I'll get something for the wound. She didn't respond, not with words. Her kind communicated with motion, with stillness. She remained upright but poised to strike. His back was exposed as he rummaged through a cluttered drawer, pulling out gauze and a jar labeled in human script she couldn't decipher. When he turned, she hadn't moved. But her gaze lingered, not on the supplies, but on him. His simplicity unsettled her. No armor, no weapon, just bare arms and an open heart he hadn't learned to guard. That made him dangerous in a way her people never trained her to understand. He approached slowly, holding the cloth like an offering. This might sting. The first touch stole her breath. His fingers brushed the edge of the wound. Not rough, not cold. Warmth spread from skin to scale, radiating through her in quiet waves. It wasn't just the healing balm. It was his presence. Calm, unflinching, absurdly gentle. She watched his face. He focused on the task, lips tight, brow creased, not out of disgust, out of care. The silence between them stretched, yet neither broke it. Outside, snow began to fall, quiet flakes tapping against the window like distant whispers. Inside, a storm far more delicate brewed between proximity and restraint. He finished tending her injury, hands lingering a second longer than necessary. She noticed. He knew she noticed. "Hungry?" he asked, breaking the spell without shattering. I can make something simple." She gave the smallest nod. Food sizzled on the stovetop. The hiss of heat filled the room while she explored without moving, observing the worn books, the tiny plant wilting by the window, the photographs stuck to the fridge door with crooked magnets. Humans recorded their memories so obsessively, as if they feared forgetting what mattered. He handed her a steaming bowl. She took it with both hands, mimicking his posture. The flavors were strange, smoky, yet somehow comforting. She swallowed, slowly, almost cautiously. "You don't talk much," he said with a half-smile. Still, she said nothing, not because she couldn't, because words had weight. And right now, everything felt too fragile to name. His eyes studied her, not as a scientist would examine a specimen, but as someone trying to memorize something he knew he wouldn't see again. That struck something deep inside her chest, place she thought was armored. He leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. "You don't have to stay long, just till you're ready." She placed the bowl down, rising slowly, her gaze meeting his fully for the first time. There was no fear in his expression, just a quiet question. "Why do you feel familiar?" Neither said it, but both felt it. In the flickering firelight, shadows stretched long across the walls, and unspoken emotions stirred between two beings who should never have crossed paths. But now that they had, something had changed. Not in the world. In them, the fire had burned low by the time they stopped pretending the silence was comfortable. Outside, the snow thickened, blanketing the world in quiet isolation. Inside, only the occasional pop of embers and the steady rhythm of shared breathing filled the space between them. She stood near the window, arms folded, watching frost curl across the glass. Her body had stopped trembling hours ago, but her mind remained alert, tracking exits, weighing consequences, cataloging sensations she had no name for. The warmth of his presence haunted the room. He hadn't touched her again. Not since tending her wound. But something about the way he moved, careful, deliberate, respectful, brushed against her thoughts like a phantom caress. His restraint was its own kind of intimacy. He spoke softly, not wanting to startle her. "What are you really doing?" "Here?" A simple question, but simple questions were dangerous. She glanced at him, then away. Her species had no word for confession, but the pressure behind her ribs felt close enough. She hadn't chosen this planet, hadn't planned the crash. But deep beneath the ruin of her vessel, she'd known Earth held more than hostility. It held possibility. She had wanted to see it with her own eyes. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn between concern and curiosity. "They'll come looking for you." Her shoulders tensed, not from fear, from certainty. "Yes," she said finally, her voice quiet but sharp. The sound startled even her. It had been days since she'd spoken aloud, maybe longer. Her accent wrapped oddly around the human tongue, melodic and clipped. "They'll come." He studied her. "Do they know you're alive?" A pause. "No." He exhaled, rubbing his jaw, pacing slowly. "Then maybe we have a little time." She tilted her head, examining him again. He spoke as though time was something that could be borrowed, stolen, shared. Among her kind, time was traded like currency, measured in lifespans and strategy. Yet he offered it freely, as though her presence wasn't an intrusion, but something chosen that frightened her more than weapons. He returned to the couch, sat down, and stared into the dying fire. "You could stay," he said, voice nearly lost to the crackle of flame. "Just for tonight, if you wanted." The offer hung there, suspended. Stay. Just for tonight. She should have refused. Instead, she moved. One step, then another, until she stood before him, close enough to see the gold flecks in his irises. Close. Enough to feel the heat rising from his skin. "You are different," she murmured. He gave a small, tired smile. "I was just thinking the same." She didn't know how it happened, whether her hand moved first or his, but suddenly they weren't just looking. His fingers brushed hers, hesitant, testing the charge between them. When she didn't recoil, he pressed gently, allowing contact to bloom into something deeper. Her breath caught. His palm rested over the back of her hand, warm and real. Her claws could have shredded him with ease. She didn't want to. He leaned forward, as if pulled by gravity, her head tilted, eyes half-lidded, their foreheads touched. Not a kiss, not yet. Just connection. Just closeness. A gesture without threat. She closed her eyes, letting herself feel his presence. The quiet hum of his breath, the heat radiating from his body, the raw, vulnerable energy neither could disguise anymore. He whispered, "I don't know what this is." She answered without hesitation. "Neither do I." No more words followed. Just a fragile moment suspended in warmth and yearning. They remained like that, foreheads pressed, fingers entwined, for what felt like hours. Not moving, not needing more. The world outside the cabin ceased to matter, the war, the stars, the species. None of it compared to this unexpected stillness between two broken souls. Eventually he stood and gestured toward the hallway. "There's a second room. You can rest there, if you want to be alone." She hesitated, then shook her head. "Here," she said quietly, looking toward the couch. He blinked, surprised. "You sure?" She gave a slow nod. "I'll stay here. Tonight." He pulled the blanket from the back of the couch, handed it to her, and stepped away. "Okay. I'll be in the other room. Call me if you need anything." She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and sank into the couch, watching him disappear down the hall. Her pulse thudded, unfamiliar and rapid. This was not weakness. It was something else. Something far more dangerous. As she closed her eyes, her mind replayed the weight of his touch, the heat of his breath. Her people would call her reckless. She called it real. Tomorrow could bring hunters, conflict, orders. But tonight, she chose to stay. Not because she had no choice, but because for the first time, she wanted to. Morning light filtered through warped glass, casting soft patterns across the floor. The fire had long since died, replaced by the chill of dawn. Yet she remained still, wrapped in the human's blanket, eyes open, thoughts circling like orbiting satellites. Sleep had come in fragments, broken by instinct and memory. Not nightmares. Those were predictable, but something quieter, more confusing. The echo of his touch, the tenderness of his gaze. She'd crossed galaxies expecting resistance, suspicion, war. She hadn't expected kindness. Footsteps approached, measured but unguarded. She didn't move as he entered, hair damp, shirt clinging from a hastily taken shower. He looked at her, uncertain whether to speak. Her silence weighed more than words. "Did you sleep?" he asked gently. Her nod was minimal, more blink than gesture. He offered a cup of something warm, steam rising, scent sharp and earthy. She took it, letting the heat kiss her palms, even though her kind didn't require warmth to survive. It still felt good. Real. "You don't have to stay here," he added. "But I'm glad you did." She looked at him, really looked, and saw more than kindness. She saw restraint. He had every chance to exploit her vulnerability. Yet he hadn't even asked her name. "You're not afraid of me," she said. "No," he replied. "Should I be?" She hesitated. "Others would be." "Then they're missing something." That answer struck her like gravity. Unexpected. Impossible to fight. Her name wasn't something she gave freely, but now it came with no effort. "Tayless." He repeated it once, softly. "Tayless." She felt it settle into the air, like a word that belonged there all along. "And you?" she asked. He smiled. "Kyle." A human name, short, sharp, fitting. He sat on the edge of the table, watching her without staring. "What happens now, Tayless?" That was the question, wasn't it? Her people would search for the wreckage. They would track the energy trail. They would find her eventually. When they did, this fragile bubble of warmth would burst. But the idea of leaving Kale, of returning to silence, to duty, tightened something in her chest she couldn't name. "Contact is forbidden," she admitted. "Your species is unregistered. Our union would be considered contamination." Kyle didn't flinch. "Sounds like something your people need to fix." She almost smiled. "Almost." "You joke," she said. "I survive," he corrected. He stepped closer, not enough to overwhelm her, just close enough that she could feel the heat of his body again. "You don't have to go yet. I shouldn't stay. But do you want to?" That question carved through her defenses. Want. Her kind didn't speak in wants. They spoke in outcomes, expectations, missions. But her body leaned toward him, and her voice, this time, didn't resist. "I do." Kyle reached for her hand, not to pull, not to claim, just to hold. Her claws had retracted. A natural response. She didn't even realize until their fingers met, and nothing about the gesture felt alien anymore. He whispered, "Then stay." Sat's thumb brushed over her knuckle, and heat spiraled upward, gentler than a fire, deeper than instinct. "You don't understand what that would mean," she said, voice hushed. "There are rules, codes, genetic boundaries." "I know," he said. "But I also know what it feels like to be near you. And I don't think I can unfeel that." Silence stretched. She didn't break it. She stepped forward, closing the final distance. Their lips met, tentative at first, unsure if the moment would shatter. But the tension that had built over hours, days, melted into one searing, wordless truth. It wasn't just desire. It was recognition. When they parted, her breath was uneven, pupils dilated, heart pulsing with things she wasn't trained to process. "This isn't logical," she murmured. "I know," he said again, "but some things don't have to be." Kyle guided her gently to sit beside him. They didn't speak of tomorrow, or warnings, or the sky that would soon fill with search beacons. They just sat. Two forms shaped by vastly different worlds, brought together by accident, held by choice. In that still moment, it didn't matter what was forbidden. It didn't matter who might come. Her presence had already altered this human's world. His touch had already rewritten hers. There was no returning to before, only forward. The signal pulsed in Tails' skull, low and rhythmic like a heartbeat she couldn't ignore. They were close. Somewhere in Earth's orbit, her people had found the wreckage. The retrieval protocol had triggered. She could almost feel the gravity tug of her command tether tightening, an invisible leash meant to drag her home. But for the first time in her life, she didn't want to follow it. Kyle was chopping wood behind the cabin, sleeves rolled to his elbows, breath misting in the cold air. His movements were fluid, powerful, unaware of the way his presence now distorted her every decision. She should have told him, should have explained the urgency, the risk of staying another hour, another minute. Instead, she watched. Everything about him burned quietly. His resilience, his quiet humor, his way of offering space without retreat. She had never met a being who made solitude feel like companionship. Her fingers hovered over the edge of the comlink embedded beneath her collarbone. She could deactivate it. Just a flick of neural intent, and the signal would vanish. But that meant severing her identity, turning her back on everything she had been trained to protect. Kyle returned, hair tousled, skin flushed from the cold. He set the chopped wood beside the hearth and looked at her, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "You're not with me right now," he said softly. "No," she admitted. "I'm not." He didn't demand answers, just waited. "There's a beacon," she continued, voice tight. "It means they're coming." He sat across from her, resting his elbows on his knees. "To take you back?" She nodded. "To question, to isolate, maybe to punish," he frowned. "Because you survived?" "No," she said bitterly. "Because I chose not to report." The silence between them thickened. Kyle leaned forward. "What do you want?" "I don't know anymore." Her voice cracked on the edge of truth. "My life used to be about duty, precision. Now all I can think about is—" She stopped herself. But Kyle didn't need her to finish. He reached for her hand again, grounding her with that familiar warmth. "We could run," he said. "There are places on Earth where even satellites can't track." She looked at him, stunned. "You do that?" He smiled faintly. "I've always been good at hiding. Guess now I've got a reason." Her heart ached. "You don't know what they're capable of. And you don't know what I'd risk. For you." The words lodged in her chest, thick with meaning. He wasn't asking for promises, wasn't claiming her. He was offering himself, in defiance of a galaxy's worth of consequences. "I don't want to ruin your life," she whispered. "You didn't. You made it matter." That was what finally broke her. Tears gathered, shimmering violet at the corners of her eyes. Her kind weren't made for softness. But he saw her, even through every layer of armor, and didn't flinch. She rose and walked toward the door, needing air, space, anything to contain the storm inside her. Outside, the wind tugged at her hair. The sky above stretched vast and uncaring, dotted with stars she used to call home. Somewhere among them, a command ship would be recalibrating, preparing for contact, preparing to erase the anomaly she'd become. Kale followed quietly, standing beside her. "They'll come soon," she said. "I know. If I go with them, I'll never see you again. And if you stay, you'll be hunted." A pause. Then he added, "But maybe we'll live." The simplicity of that hope stunned her. Live, not hide, not obey, just exist, messy and free, together. She turned to him, studying every line of his face as if memorizing it for the last time. "I've never belonged anywhere." "You do here," he said. She believed him. The sound in her head pulsed again, stronger now. An orbital sweep was nearing. They were running out of time. She took a breath, held it, then reached beneath the base of her neck and deactivated the beacon. A sharp shock pulsed through her spine, but then silence. No signal. No tether. Kyle looked at her. "You sure?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm sure of you." For once, she wasn't Talus the scout, or the commander, or the anomaly. She was just a woman who had fallen for a man who shouldn't have mattered, yet somehow did. Kale took her hand, interlacing their fingers, pressing her palm to his chest. His heartbeat was steady, fierce, familiar now. Whatever happened next, she had chosen it, not out of fear, not out of duty, but because in the chaos of two colliding worlds, they'd found something neither expected, a reason to stay. Together. Sky burned violet the next morning, not with fire, but with presence. The air shimmered faintly as though touched by energy, and somewhere above the clouds, Tayles could feel them. They'd come. She stood at the edge of the clearing, Kyle beside her, both watching the sky as if it might answer the questions neither of them dared to voice aloud. His hand brushed against hers. She took it. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked quietly. She nodded once. "They're scanning, looking for me." He didn't flinch. "Do you want to go?" "No." A single syllable. Spoken without hesitation, yet thick with weight. "But they might still take you," he said, "even without the beacon." "They won't find me," she replied, turning to him. "Not if I don't let them." The confidence in her voice surprised even her. Not defiance, clarity. For the first time, her choices weren't dictated by commands or protocols. They were hers, entirely. Kale studied her, eyes filled with questions and reverence. "So what now?" "We move," she said. "I know how to hide, better than they expect." "And if they do find you anyway?" She tilted her head. "Then we keep running," he laughed under his breath. "You say that like we've done this before. Maybe in another life." The air shifted around them, an unnatural stillness. Somewhere above, a silent drone zipped by, invisible to human eyes. Tayles felt it brush her senses and held her breath. But the scan passed. No lock, no alert, just silence again. Her grip on Kale's hand tightened. "We're safe, for now." He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing. "You're really staying, aren't you?" "I already did." They stood there for a while, surrounded by wind and pine and stars that no longer seemed like home. Later, they packed what little he owned and what little she could carry. Kyle's tools, her scorched survival gear, a solar compass. They moved into the deep forest, further away from the crash site. No trackers, no signals. Just the sound of earth beneath their feet and the rhythm of breathing in tandem. Their shelter was simple, caves hidden beneath layers of moss and stone, warmed by geothermal springs Tayles located using her mapping vision. Primitive, yes. But warm, quiet. The kind of place no one would ever think to look for a human and an alien wrapped in each other's arms. Nights passed like drifting embers, each one burning with tension, comfort, heat. Their kisses were unhurried, their touches no longer hesitant, still respectful, still restrained, but no longer burdened by fear. When Kale asked questions about her past, she answered slowly, cautiously, bits and pieces. Nothing that could endanger either of them, but enough to feel known. She learned more about him, too, not just the way his hands were calloused from building things, but the way he looked at her as if she'd always been part of his story. Like every hour before her had been a prelude. Once, after a long stretch of silence beneath the stars, Kale said, "I used to think I didn't belong anywhere." She didn't reply right away. She simply leaned in, resting her forehead against his, letting the warmth between them speak. Eventually, the sky stopped watching. The orbital presence faded. Her people must have decided she was gone, lost, erased, in the crash. But Tayles knew better. She hadn't been erased. She'd been reborn. One evening, as they lay beside the spring, Kale traced the edge of a scar near her collarbone. "You still think about them?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "I think about how angry they'd be. That I chose this." "This?" he echoed. "You," she corrected. "I chose you." He smiled, leaning down to kiss her gently. "I'd choose you again. In every version of the universe, they didn't need promises, or oaths, or names carved into trees. They just needed this. Breath shared, Warmth held, time paused between heartbeats. The danger hadn't vanished. It never would. Not completely. But they had carved out a sliver of space where love could grow wild, untamed, unsanctioned, utterly real. And that was enough. For now. For always.